10 people who survived the impossible. 10. Roy Sullivan. Some might say that 7 is a lucky number, but don't you dare say that to this park ranger. The unlucky man was struck on 7 different occasions over 3 decades. Apparently he is a natural conductor of electricity. I know who I would want to be standing next to during a lightning storm. Unfortunately, Sullivan didn't see it as luckily surviving, and eventually died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Izvesna Vulovic is one lucky flight attendant. More than 40 years after surviving a plane explosion that saw everyone else on board perish, Vulovic somehow still has no memory of the incident. While doubts have been raised about how she survived a fall from 33,000 feet, she still had to also survive a coma and partial paralysis. It truly is a lucky escape. Some speculate the legitimacy of her claims, but I think they're just jealous they aren't indestructible. 8. Frane Selak. This impossibly unlucky man didn't just survive one crazy incident, but a whole bunch. From a derailed train, fuel tank explosions and a plane crash. Oh, and a bus crashing into a freezing river. Don't worry though, he also ended up winning the lottery, making him either the luckiest or unluckiest man in the world. Instead of rubbing a Buddha's belly for good luck, maybe we should start drumming Selaks. Seven. Aron Ralston. Now this story might ring a few bells, especially if you're a James Franco fan. Made famous by the movie 127 Hours, Ralston literally survived cutting his own arm off. Ralston was struck down by a boulder that pinned him to a rock for, you guessed it, 127 hours. Delirious, dehydrated and desperate, Ralston eventually resorted to snapping his arm and hacking it off with a dull blade. Also, you have to feel a little bad for the park rangers who had to retrieve his severed arm. That is 6. Moro Prosperi. You might have been thirsty at some point or another, but you've never been so thirsty you would drink your own urine. As a keen endurance runner, Prospero was competing in the Marathon of Sands in Morocco when a massive sandstorm blew him off course. Somehow he ended up running several hundred kilometers to neighboring Algeria, where he took shelter in an abandoned mosque and ate some of its resident bats. After a failed suicide attempt, he was so dehydrated his blood had thickened, he was found by a nomadic family and returned to safety. It's fair to say he 5. Anatoly Gorski. As a researcher, Gorski took his job with particle accelerators and proton beams very seriously. So, in 1978, when a machine was malfunctioning, Gorski took it upon himself to see what the problem was. Once he stuck his head in the machine, though his brain was subjected to 600 rats, 500 is enough to kill someone. Well, over the next few days his entire face swelled up, before it starting peeling off. Somehow though his brain was never negatively impacted by the blast. Decades on, Gorski isn't able to move the left side of his face, and the accident has actually meant he has never gotten any wrinkles. Better than Botox, I guess. 4. Stella Maris College Rugby. This one sure might make you question your morals. The now infamous rugby team survived a plane crash into the Andes from Uruguay to Chile, but surviving the crash wasn't the toughest part. After they heard on the radio that the search for them had been ended, they resorted to cannibalism. By eating the bodies of their teammates, they were able to stay alive in the 30-degree nights, and eventually 2 brave souls ventured over the mountains to Chile. The team survived 72 days stranded on a mountaintop. Now that is a story not suitable for the grandchildren. 3. Helen Clabon. Most of us can't go a few hours without having a bite to eat. Imagine lasting 42 days without any food. That is exactly what Clabon and Ralph Flores did when their single-engine aircraft went down in the dense Yukon wilderness. It wasn't a freak accident, it was pilot error that resulted in Clabon becoming a minor celebrity and losing a whole bunch of weight, which she was really happy about. While Clabon was left immobilized from a crushed foot, Flores eventually wrote the sauce sign that resulted in the rescue. 2. Phillip Lim. When the merchant ship he was on sunk, Lim survived for 4 months adrift on one of the ship's rafts. Lucky for Lim, when the ship was going down he managed to find a few cans of food and water to sustain him for a little while. His story is one of the most impressive, mainly because of how well he come out of it. With no serious injuries other than severe dehydration, Lim came out of the experience relatively unscathed, but with a hatred for raw fish which he lived off for 133 days. 1. Anna Holm. For minor hypothermia, Holm survived being frozen alive. In 2000, when the doctor in training was skiing on one of her regular slopes, she fell through a sheet of ice and was trapped underwater for 80 minutes. Amazingly, Holm found a tiny air pocket to stay alive while she waited for rescuers. Her body temperature got so low that she now holds the record for the lowest surviving body temperature at just 57 degrees Fahrenheit, 98.6 is normal. Share this article with your family and friends, and see what they think.